state Senate race, worked as press secretary for the Ohio Democratic Party, and held legislative and campaign roles with the Ohio Senate Democratic Caucus. Rachel has extensive nonprofit experience as well. She managed grassroots mobilization of ACLU of Ohio and served as communications director for Innovation Ohio. Rachel holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and political science from the Ohio State University and a master's degree in political communication from American University. We will have a question and answer period after her presentation, so please hold on to your questions and until the end. And so, may I offer a big welcome to Rachel RCoyle.
Hello, everyone. Okay, good. So I am Rachel RCoyle. I have been doing some version of this training for about a decade now, and it has changed a lot because in the last couple of years we've really started to see attempts to make it harder for people to participate in the State House. So I've started to add in explanations about the political atmosphere and things you need to know beyond just how a bill becomes a law in Ohio. So I'm going to walk you through that tonight and would love to take your questions as well. Okay, so basic introduction, make sure that Patrice has your email address because everything that I'm going to talk about tonight, all the slides, all the resources, all the websites, they will come to you in an email afterwards as long as someone, the event organizers, have your email address. So it's coming to you, don't worry about memorizing it all. The other thing to know is I give this presentation at all skill levels. So sometimes I give presentations to people who didn't know we have a state government. That is more common than you think. So basically what I'm saying is there are no dumb questions. Ask your questions. If you have a question, I guarantee half the room has it too. So please ask me, I want to make this easy for you. So what we're going to talk about today, some basic introduction like terms you need to know. Some things about the political atmosphere at the State House that you need to understand. Then we'll walk through actually how a bill becomes a law in Ohio and where you can insert yourself into that process. I'll give you some resources, which I will email to you, and a couple key bills, but mostly I want to just give you a resource that will tell you where all the bills are. You can find your favorites, and then we'll do some Q&A. All right, so this slide I put in every presentation I give because this is a lot of information I'm about to throw at you. But if you only remember one thing tonight, I need it to be how much power you have at the state level. So few people pay attention to the State House that you do not need to know 1 million people to get a lot done. If just the people in this room all called the State House on the same day, you would shut the phone lines down. They are not used to this number of people contacting them. It is so easy to make noise at the state level. When I worked there, we usually would go hours in between a single constituent phone call. So everything you do at the State House really, really matters. But that also means that if you don't take action at the state level, it only takes a few people with a really dangerous idea to get their thing across the finish line. So we have to be paying attention at the state level, even though I know there's a million other things going on, because there are going to be a couple people who try to pass laws that are really harmful. So one of the things I've been trying to do recently is explain to people how much power they have. And I've been partnering with this group called Ohioans Against Extremism to do bill trackers to show people their power over time. So this was our first one. This was last year, lameduck.wtf. The website is still up. It makes me laugh, so I pay extra for the WTFs. And it is basically what we did was we pulled a bunch of bills that were moving through the State House, and then we gave people calls to action throughout the week and throughout the months as the bills moved. We wrote out calls like emails to make and calls to call and anytime testimony was needed. And then at the end of the year, we tracked how all the bills turned out. And so this is a ton of text, but basically everything marked in red there on the right is a bill we supported that ended up becoming law at the end of last year. So you never hear about the State House, you probably didn't read about most of these bills, but if your goal is to make the world a better place, we are accomplishing that by focusing on the State House. So I'm going to tell you just a couple things about these bills that I'm really, really proud of. One of the bills I'm really excited about that is now a law is helping to provide state ID cards to inmates in jails and prisons, so that when they get out of jail or prison, they can actually housing and find a job and vote and participate in society so they don't end up back in jail or prison. It is a little thing that is going to change countless lives, and it's going to save taxpayers money because you spend less money when people are not going in and out of the prison system all the time. Another bill that is now law that I'm really excited about is called Madeline's Law. It is a requirement now that insurance companies cover hearing aids for kids, because before this law, insurance companies consider hearing aids to be cosmetic fixes, so they wouldn't cover them. It is gross, I know. So again, you're never going to hear in the news about how many kids get hearing aids because of this law, but we know that we're improving lives, and that is the goal. So there's so much you can do at the state level by just getting involved in an issue or a group that is focused on the state level. So now we're going to talk through some very basic terms you need to know and some of the atmosphere at the State House. Couple terms. One is General Assembly, or GA. So that refers to the State House, but it also refers to the 2-year period they operated. That is important, because any bill that's introduced at the state level only has those 2 years to go through the whole process. House, Senate, governor, signed into law. Even if it gets most of the way there, but doesn't get signed by the end of the 2 years, it'll die and has to start completely over as a whole new bill next time around. Sometimes our strategy is literally to kill a bill 1 week at a time for 2 years, and it works. So that also leads us to the second term, which is lame duck. At the end of every 2 years, we have a period called lame duck, where every politician at the State House knows all their bills are about to die. So they run around like crazy trying to pass everything they can as fast as they can. It is madness. They know it's going to be madness. They actually tend to hold some of their most controversial stuff for lame duck because they know things are going to slip through the cracks. Ohio also has the worst possible timing for our lame duck session. Our lame ducks happen in even-numbered years in November and December. So our last one was right after the presidential election last year. Everybody on earth wanted to turn their TVs off and spend the holidays with their family, and I had to beg everybody to come to the State House and focus on policy. So if you haven't yet made your 2026 holiday plans, I would like you all to know that we should all commit to staying home and fighting in December of 26, and then we can all go on holiday in January of 27. Another term to know is session. So it has 2 meanings. One is the time of year when the legislators are working. Technically in Ohio, it's a part-time job, must be nice. And then it also refers to the times when they're physically at the State House voting on bills, both called session. Another term you need to know in Ohio is supermajority. So I tell people, I don't care which party you are, supermajorities are bad. They are bad no matter who has them. Because what they do is they give one branch of government all the power. It leads to extremist policies that nobody asked for. Even in Ohio, we have a Republican supermajority. There's a lot of bills passing out of the State House that even your Republican neighbors and friends didn't ask for and don't want. And that is because there is no step along the process where someone can step in and tell these folks, maybe that is a bad idea. Maybe that thing is not scientifically possible. There is no step along the way. So right now in Ohio, we've got a Republican trifecta, all 3 branches of government, and then the supermajority, which means that if Governor DeWine, who is also Republican, decides to veto a bill, which he does do fairly regularly, there are enough Republicans to override that veto and force the thing into law without the governor's support, without the support of the public. They can just do it. So these are the current leaders of the Ohio State House. The 2 at the top are the Republicans, but the guy I really want you to focus on is there on the top right. That is Matt Huffman. Some of you have heard of him. The Speaker of the Ohio House. This is the most powerful man in Ohio. This man right here is the Donald Trump of Ohio. He controls everything. Every bill that passes in the next 2 years, his decision. Every bill that fails, his decision. He has been around for a long time. He's been amassing power, and he is ruthless with his power. One example, the House Republican Caucus usually raises money into the House Republican Caucus Fund. This year, they're raising money mostly into the Matt Huffman Fund, and then he doles it out as he sees fit. He is very, very good at wielding power, even over his own colleagues. This is a lot of text too, but basically what happened this past year, he also had the House pass a him do, he now has total control over all committee assignments. So just again, a thing that he can hold over his colleagues if he doesn't like what you're doing on committee, if you are asking too many good questions, he could remove you or replace you with someone not as good. He also gave himself the power to fire other people's staff. Because again, little things to hold over his colleagues. He is brilliant, he is ruthless, and he is the reason that a lot of the bills are moving in Ohio right now. So another thing he's been doing is telling some lies. But basically, Matt Huffman does not, like a lot of powerful leaders, does not want people involved in the political process. So he has been doing things like telling the press that he is banning people from standing outside the House chamber during votes. That is not an official rule. They did not write it down, they did not vote it in, but he's been increasing the police presence outside the House chamber during votes to try and physically intimidate people into not being at the State House. The goal is to scare us away, to make us think we can't come and be in the people's house. What actually needs to happen is the opposite of that. We need to show up more often in larger numbers and be louder. Because he did not actually ban us from the State House, he banned us from this one room. So you may have to be one room over. You might have to be a little louder, but he needs to see that the people are going to respond negatively when he tries to keep us out of the process. The great thing though is it is incredibly easy to make noise at the State House again. So these are actual articles from a couple months ago. And actual photos. There is a bill you may have heard of at this point called Senate Bill 1. It is now law. It is radically altering how higher education looks in Ohio. It's really bad. And Ohio State, my alma mater, is implementing it, I think, the worst of any of the schools I've seen. So this bill was introduced a couple months ago. There was a press conference announcing the bill, and about 25 students showed up to the State House to protest outside the press conference. They didn't go in, they just stood in the public hall outside the press conference. They had shirts and signs and they were chanting. And the politicians didn't like it because you could hear the chants on the TV cameras. So they sent out a police presence, you're sensing a theme, to try and intimidate the students into leaving, but they did not. Instead, what happened was the press came and they took photos of the students, they interviewed them, and we ended up with all these articles that were not just about the bill, they were about the bill and all the people who hate it. With 25 people at the State House, we changed the entire narrative of the bill from day one. Every time reporters wrote another story about SB1, they pulled these photos back up and used them again. It is so easy to change the whole narrative with that few people at the state level. So this has actually become a big part of our strategy at how things work at the State House, because a lot of times we are having fights on bills that we are likely to lose. And it is very difficult to understand why you have to keep going even when you think you're going to lose a fight. One of the reasons for that is what we call losing loudly. And it's basically, in politics, if you're in it for the right reason, the first thing you want to do is make good stuff happen. But if you can't do that, you want to stop bad stuff from happening. But everybody always forgets the third part, which is that you have to make sure people know who is doing bad things. Even if that's all you can do. We have to name the villains. We need people to know who is hurting them, who is raising the prices, who is making the potholes bigger in your roads. And if we do this over time, you can't just do it at election season. You have to do it constantly, month after month, year after year. Eventually, people will have a public memory of these people's names. Someday, people will go to the ballot and they will see Matt Huffman's name and they will think, you know, I don't think I like that guy. And they might not even know why, but they know they've heard his name over and over again in a negative context. That is, it's called losing loudly, and is critical, not just for right now, but if you ever want to win, ever again. So another piece of our strategy is reminding ourselves that politicians are people. A lot of politics is literally just psychology. Politicians want to feel cool. They want to feel popular. They want to feel powerful. They want to feel good about themselves. So they do things to limit their interaction with people who don't like them. They limit public testimony. In the State House, we see this all the time. Congress members will not hold town halls because they don't want to deal with the feeling of a large group of people not liking them. Nobody likes that feeling. They will surround themselves with people who agree. So we have to find ways to break through that bubble. is one of the most annoying facts about the State House, but one of the best ways to reach our legislators is Twitter. They tweet at me like 3 times a week. It is outrageous. They are all on their personal phones reading what people say about them. So that's just one way. Another thing, like when I go to Lima, where Matt Huffman is from, I tell people that he should be going to the grocery store and seeing little stickers with his face on them pointing at the milk prices, and like people do with Donald Trump. We need to make it so that their neighbors are angry at them for what's going on in Ohio. We have to find ways, and you can be creative about it, but we have to find ways to break through the bubble. Another thing about politics being psychology is that being the squeaky wheel is very effective because nobody likes to be annoyed. So when I worked at the State House, there was a guy who used to call all the time about a very specific movie producer tax credit that he wanted because he was a movie producer. He would call every like 2 or 3 days over and over again, and everybody hated answering the phone because we knew what he was calling about. And long story short, Ohio now has that very specific movie tax credit because they didn't want to deal with that guy anymore. A lot of times, being the squeaky wheel is very, very effective. So basically, you want to be a problem. It has become part of my career now to make these people's lives harder. And a lot of times, on the really bad days, that is what works. That is, these people who are hurting my communities, who are passing bills that harm people I care about, they don't deserve to have a good day. They don't deserve to go home and relax at night. Instead, they should have to have an extra stiff drink because I exist. And sometimes that is enough. So it is very, very important to constantly remember that they are people and that interacting with them in ways that you would find annoying or powerful or impactful matters. So a lot of people hate past lives, right? So a lot of times people will ask me some alternatives to being a problem. And there are some ways to get things done at the State House when you don't want to be annoying. One of them is finding a very specific niche issue, maybe something that's not in the news. You can get a lot accomplished, even bipartisan stuff. Like the 2 bills I mentioned earlier. Those bills are not in the news, but everybody cares about kids being able to hear. So we were able to get that one across the finish line. If you find a thing that is maybe going to not be in the news top story, you can really get a lot done, even with Republicans, even across the line. You can also build a close relationship with a Republican legislator, build a friendly relationship with them. This is harder to do recently. We used to have several more legislators who were friendly with their constituents. There was one guy, Jay Edwards, in the Athens area. He used to literally text his constituents. So there used to be more of them that were open to those types of relationships. But if you have the ability to do that, it can still be very effective to make friends with someone who has the ear of the people in power. And then if you're an organization of any kind, hiring a lobbyist with Republican ties is very useful. And oftentimes you'll see in Ohio, even the smallest orgs with 3 staffers, one of those staffers is a lobbyist, because they have learned that that is their best bet to making an impact at the state level. So now we're actually going to talk about the process of how a bill becomes a law in Ohio and where you can be inserted into that process. So this is a very simple graphic showing you that it's very similar to what you learned in junior high about the federal government. There is a House, and there is a Senate, and there is a white man who signs stuff into law. That is the process. And it's very similar, and it also matters because a lot of people forget that bills have to go through both chambers. So you'll read in the news bill passes Senate, and you think that fight is over, but actually there's a whole other step. So step 1, your bill is introduced. It can come, usually, from the House or the Senate. Sometimes the House and the Senate. They introduce 2 bills that say the same thing because they want to show there's so much power and force behind their bill that they had to introduce it twice. The other thing that's important to know, this trips a lot of people up, bills will keep their same number the whole 2 years, the whole General Assembly. Even if, Senate Bill 1, never stopped being Senate Bill 1. Even when it passed over into the House, it stayed Senate Bill 1. It just shows us where the bill started, shows us how far in the process it has come. All right, and then step 2, once your bill is introduced, it gets a committee assignment. The committee is just a few politicians who get together and they talk about bills in a certain issue area. So we've got a healthcare committee, we've got an education committee, an aging committee, an agriculture committee. And whatever issues you're passionate about, you should be paying attention to those committees because that's actually where most of the magic happens. Most policymaking happens in the committee process, and by the time it gets to the floor, it's pretty far gone. So one of the best things you can do as an advocate is actually call and demand to be placed on the committee notice list, which is just an email that gets sent out anytime the committee is going to meet. They'll tell you where they're going to be, what bills they're hearing, what type of testimony they're accepting, and then you can participate early on by being on those lists. So I will send you a document that shows you how to sign up for those lists, but I'm also going to walk you through it very quickly right now because it helps to have seen it. So this is a website I will send you. It's legislature.ohio.gov. All the committees are listed on there. I'm going to click on Senate committees here. All the committees are listed, alphabetical order. You can just pick the ones that interest you. Or if you all are a group that meets regularly, you could assign different committees to different people. And then folks can report back about what their committee is up to if you want to take ownership over a committee that way. But I'm going to click on Finance Committee here. Takes you to this page. This is what a committee page looks like. All the members are up there. The chair is always listed first. The chair is the most powerful person in the committee. They decide which bills move and which bills die. They decide the rules, they decide who gets to testify, everything is theirs in the committee. So they're also the person on the Senate side that you're going to contact to be placed on the committee notice list. So I'm going to click on Jerry Serino's face. Sorry about that. Here's his page. You see on the left there, there's his phone number, his email. All you got to do is contact him and ask to be placed on the Senate Finance notice list, and then you will start getting those emails anytime the committees meet. The House made it easier. I don't know why the Senate hasn't figured this out, but someday. So legislature.ohio.gov, again, House committees. Pick a committee that interests you. They have a button. I don't know why the Senate has not figured out button technology yet, but the House has a mailing list button. All you have to do is pick the ones that interest you, click them, sign yourself up, and you don't have to talk to anybody. Step 3. So once your bill is in a committee, it's supposed to start getting hearings. But actually, this is where most bills go and sit for the 2 years and then they die. So one of the best things we can do is call and demand hearings for bills we like. It is remarkable, because politics is psychology, how often they will give you a hearing to shut you up. But that still matters, because every time you get a hearing, you get more chance to get the public interested in your issue. You get more of a chance to get the press to write stories about your bill and get more people aware of it, so you can build up the public support and interest in that issue. And the other thing you can do is you can call and you can demand that they stop moving forward on bills you don't like. It is, again, remarkable how often they will cancel a bill hearing because they don't want to deal with us. They don't want to deal with protesters. They don't want to deal with a packed room full of angry Ohioans. They don't want to deal with the negative press. So they will cancel the bill hearing and they will wait. They will hope that you move on to another issue. Or that they hope they can pass it 3 weeks later when everybody has moved on. And so one of our strategies a lot of times is to kill a bill 1 week at a time for 2 years, and sometimes it works. So I am saying call a lot. There is a reason for that. It is not like calling Congress. There is no computer system where they enter all your data. You will not get kicked out if you enter the wrong zip code. It is literally just you and a staffer on the phone. So your goal is to take up the staffer's time. At the end of the day, you want that staffer to go to their boss and say, oh my God, I got nothing done today because everyone hates that education bill. That is a success, because their boss will remember that. They will remember the public cares about this bill. It also matters to call because you are not going to be talking to a million different interns. You're actually going to be talking to the same people over and over again. There's only one paid staffer in the House for each office, and there's only 2 paid staffers in the Senate for each office. So you want to call, you want to be polite, friendly, build a relationship with these staffers. You can get a lot accomplished. Sometimes they'll call us and they'll give us inside information about a bill. They'll say, hey, I know you care about this thing. I heard in the hall it might move. You want to get your people together. That's how few people call the State House. They remember us and what we're calling about. So you want to be friendly with the staff, and you really can get a lot of good information and help out of them. Another reason to call is because they will get your voicemails. It is not like calling Congress. They have to listen to their voicemails because there's only one phone line per office. So you and the lobbyists and the senators are calling the same phone number. They have to listen to those voicemails. So you want to call, you want to leave a contact phone number and ask for a call back. It is a great test of whether or not you have a responsive legislator. It also is, sometimes they only get 10 people who left a phone number that day, so they can just call you 10 on the way home. It is that easy. but a lot of people don't know they have this ability. And of course, some of you will have a legislator who doesn't call you back, so it's a good test. Another thing to note, because so few people call the State House, you can absolutely call people who don't represent you. You can call committee chairs and say, I'm calling about bill in your committee, and they will understand why you're doing that. You may get a staffer who's feeling like a jerk that day, and they will ask for your zip code, but they're not writing it down, and you can just know that. You are also still having the same emotional, psychological impact on them, where at the end of the day, they're gonna be like, everybody called about that same stupid bill. They're not gonna remember that you weren't from the district. But if you are calling your own legislator, there's extra power in that, so you wanna mention it. Say your zip code, say I'm a voter in your district, make sure they know. So another option we have as Ohioans, we can come in and testify for or against bills in the State House. Your goal is to testify in person because that gives you the power of the press, which will be there. You can get on TV. You can get that big visual of a full packed room that the press loves. But we make it hard. We tend to have hearings at like 10 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays, and I can't tell you how long the hearing's gonna go. I can only tell you when it starts. So you have to be able to give up a solid chunk of your day. So if you can't testify in person, you can testify written only, which is still an official part of the process, still available in documentation about the bill, still online. The legislators will have it on these like iPads and committee that they have in front of them. But I also recommend that you do a little bit extra work to make sure that it's seen, because I can't promise you they'll be. So I recommend that folks email all the committee members and say, hey, see this testimony? I submitted this, you should read it. Or you can post it online, post it on social media and say, I submitted this testimony today, everyone should read and share. Just do a little bit extra to make sure your testimony gets
And
out.
then send the link.
Yes, send them the link, make it clear. All right. So an important note, you cannot just send in testimony whenever you want. You have to wait until they've announced that they're having a hearing on that bill. So that's another reason why it's so important to be on those committee notice lists, because then you'll know when you can send in testimony. This is what a notice looks like. So when you sign up for those notice lists, this is what you're going to get in your email. It'll see on the left the bills they're about to hear. In the middle, it'll tell you when and where they're going to be, and then on the right, it'll tell you what type of testimony they're accepting, like if they're only accepting opponents that day. And once you get that notice, then you can send in your testimony. The great thing though is it is so easy to submit testimony. The entire House process is listed on this one slide. You get the notice, because you're all on the email list, you write your testimony, then you email it to the committee chair, all-powerful committee chair, 24 hours before the hearing. You also have to send them a witness slip, which is just basic information about yourself, like if you're a lobbyist or if you represent an organization. So that's it though, that's the whole process. And the witness slip, I'll send you a blank one tonight, but they also will send you a link to a witness slip on the committee email notice when you get it. So that's the whole process. You email your testimony and your witness slip to the chair 24 hours in advance. You have just participated in Ohio government. The Senate process is actually slightly easier. So you write your testimony and then you upload it directly to the Senate committee website. And you don't have to deal with the witness slip, you just fill out the information when you're uploading your document. So it's actually an easier process. All right, so another great thing about testifying is it can be really short. You do not have to feel like you are assigning yourself a term paper. A few sentences is fine. A few paragraphs is perfect. The pros, the lobbyists, theirs are gonna only be a few paragraphs, because if you get a big room full of people, they're probably gonna cut everybody off at like 2 or 3 minutes. So you might as well get the really good, important stuff out right at the beginning. It doesn't have to be a lengthy project. I actually recommend that groups that want to be more social, you can get together and have testimony parties where you hang out, and you have wine and food, and then everybody writes a paragraph, and then you all go back to hanging out. It really can be that simple. So this is another thing I'll send you. This is just a testimony template so that you can feel confident that your testimony is formatted exactly the way the lobbyists are doing it. So I will send you this, and if you format it that way, you will be good to go. This is a reminder to tell you that we have seen a lot of attempts to make it harder to testify in the last couple of years. That's how I know it works, because they don't want you to do it. So we have started seeing things like invite-only testimony, or a limited number of testimonies allowed, or they will cut off testimony at 2 hours no matter how many people are left to talk, things like that. So unfortunately, we've been talking to some lawyers, and at the moment, there's not a ton we can do legally. So the answer is to be a problem. So this is a real example from a couple years ago. These folks showed up to testify against a bill that would radically increase penalties for protesting at drilling and pipeline fracking sites. So pipeline protests, essentially, would be heavily criminalized under this bill. These folks showed up to testify. They were told that even though they'd submitted testimony, only a few of them were going to be allowed to talk that day. And instead of just going home quietly, they protested. They went into the halls of the State House and they chanted and they cheered and they yelled, and the press heard it and came running. The press loves a ruckus. And so they took photos of these folks, they interviewed them, and we ended up with all these articles about this bill that wouldn't have been written if they had just let these people talk. And that has to be the message, that we are going to be more obnoxious if they try to prevent us from participating in state government. So a really good resource we have available to us is ohiochannel.org. It is completely free. You do not need a subscription. All of the hearings can be watched online on Ohio Channel, all the sessions as well. And they are archived, so you can watch them later. It makes for great social media content. So one thing I will send you is a document showing you how to pull video clips from Ohio Channel. Because it is, everybody that you know is sharing the same article about Donald Trump all the time. If you share a few articles or a few video clips about state government, you will soon become the person in your community who people go to for state news, because you will be the only one sharing something different. There is so much power in literally just sharing a news article about the state. So everything we just talked about was the committee process, because that is where most of the magic happens. But sometimes a bill does pass a committee. And so what happens is it will need a full floor vote. So if it was in a House committee, it needs a vote by everybody in the House. Some bills will actually get out of committee and then never get to the floor, and then they die after 2 years. If a bill gets a floor vote, it's gonna usually pass the chamber. They very, very rarely bring up bills for a vote if they don't know they're going to pass. So then, if it passes the chamber, it goes over to the other chamber, gets a whole new committee assignment, and start the whole process over. So you could technically come in and testify on your bill twice, once in the House, once in the Senate. I will note that there are a lot of ways that the politicians have been trying to skip through parts of this process, but this is the traditional process. So now I'll give you some resources real quick, and then we'll get to Q&A. So this is, again, legislature.ohio.gov, which I will send you, but I get a lot of questions about how to find out what your politicians are up to, and this is the answer to that one. So there is a legislation tab and a search legislation tab, and you can look up by primary sponsor. So you click on the name of a legislator, and it'll show you every bill that they have introduced over this last 2-year period. Or you can even look back on previous General Assemblies, previous 2-year terms, see what they introduced several years ago. You can also look up by co-sponsor, which is just click a legislator's name again, and it's any bill that they have signed their name onto. They didn't write the bill, but they thought it mattered enough, they cared about it enough to put their name onto it. So they should be held accountable for those too. Or on the same search tab, you can just type in a bill number and see more information about that bill. So if you read about a bill in the news or online and you want to look it up, this is the way to do that. So this is what a bill page looks like when you find one there. The thing that really matters though is the documents tab at the top left there, because reading a bill can be very intimidating. Sometimes they're hundreds of pages long. So one of the best resources we have in Ohio, if you want to help your community understand what a bill does, is the bill analysis. It is a nonpartisan bullet point breakdown written in plain non-lawyer English, explaining to you what the bill would do. It is so helpful, so much more approachable and digestible than a bill. So this is what they look like, bullet point breakdown, telling you what the bill would do. And they do this for every bill once it gets more than one hearing. So really great tool to help your friends understand a bill without making them read hundreds of pages. Another thing, at this point, a lot of you are probably feeling very overwhelmed. That's totally normal. So another thing we have in Ohio is we are so blessed to have just an incredible number of advocacy organizations in our state. Most of them are nonpartisan. Most of them are focused on one issue area or another. This is just a tiny sampling of them. This is just a few that I work with most often. But what I'll send you tonight is a longer list of them. And what you can do is just go through, pick a few that interest you, sign up for their email lists, or follow them on social media. They will alert you when the big stuff is happening. They will tell you when a bill needs calls, or emails, or testimony, so that you don't have to be the person trying to figure out which bills to follow. This is a great way to narrow down all the chaos for yourself. So because we don't have as much time tonight, I'm just going to show you where the bills are that I track, and then you're welcome to ask any questions about specific bills you've heard of. I'm happy to talk through them. So this is my tracker for this year, ohiobills.wtf. Again, I'm paying a couple extra bucks because the WTF makes me laugh, and I'm never going to stop. So this is our 2025-2026 bill tracker, and during the legislative session, I update it multiple times a week. They're currently on their summer break. May they never return. But when they do, I will be updating that document constantly. And so this is what it looks like. It is not fancy, it's a Google Doc. But basically what happens is at the top there, if you're feeling overwhelmed again, we list our priorities. We list the bills that we think are the ones you should really be focusing on. Or you can skip through and find the bills that interest you or your organization the most. And all you have to do is click on one. I'm going to click on Ohio's version of the SAVE Act, because everybody should know about that one. And it takes you lower down in the document. There's resources about the bill, there's articles about the bill, there's actions to take. I will list out phone numbers, I'll give you a script. We try to make it as easy as humanly possible to take action, even if you have a job and kids and a life. Because, again, so few people do these things that just a few of us taking these actions could really make a huge impact. So if any of this has interested you, I am on every social media platform that exists. I will find you and make you care about the State House. That's my plan. And it is, again, it is so important to share even just one article about the state because nobody else is doing it. So I will share content on here that you can share, calls to action, that kind of thing, especially when there's big bills that need testimony or calls, I will share those on here. I now have a Substack. If you prefer to receive emails and you're not on social media, you can sign up for that. This is the group that is helping me fund those trackers. So if you think the trackers are a good idea, you should definitely get involved with Ohioans Against Extremism. They are a 501c4 nonprofit, so they can be spicier, they can be meaner, they can point fingers and name names, because their goal is not to go in and meet with the legislators. And they have provided really good cover for some of the nonprofit groups that do need to do that work. So they are wonderful. They're the ones helping me do those trackers. And then if you want to help me pay for gas, that would be cool. And then we have here, the only thing I need you to remember, everything else, it would be great if you remembered it, but if you go away with one thing, it's how much power there is at the state level because so few people pay attention at the state level. Anything you do, any phone call you make, the phones were probably sitting dead before you call. So your voice is so, so important. And if that's all you get out of tonight, that will still be a very good, successful night for me. All right, so that was a ton of stuff. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have.